Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Connect to Car roundtable discussion entitled, What Do Autonomous Vehicles Mean for Regulation? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tech Talks. Please welcome Bryn Balcom, Chief Strategy Officer for RoboRace.
Good morning. Welcome. Thanks for staying around. I think this morning's keynote was really a really difficult act to follow, but thank you for staying with me. So my name is Bryn Balcom. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at RoboRace. We're the world's first fully connected, fully autonomous motorsport series. We're based in the UK. We've been in existence since 2015. And could just everyone hear me on the mic? It's just difficult to. Perfect. So first thing I'd like to do normally in an audience is just ask, who believes the future is going to be electric, connected, and autonomous? We can have a quick show of hands. And then who in the audience has watched some form of motorsport before? Okay, so the proposition of RoboRace is very simple. It's just combining those two worlds together. It's like looking to say, if the mega trend is electric, connected, autonomous, what's the role of motorsport? How does that play a role in this future? But motorsport itself is kind of a fusion. It's technology-based entertainment, or at least that's what it is now. In the past, the entertainment aspect wasn't there. It was a technology proving ground. It was somewhere where you could go to demonstrate how good your technology was. And back then, it was powertrain, it was chassis. So this is the very first race. Took place from Paris to Rouen. What I love about this image is it's real cars racing through real traffic. So not only is there a challenge of completing that distance, but actually doing that in the real world environment. And by doing that, you build trust. The public are able to build acceptance of this technology alongside the horse and carriages that were in existence at the time. As the speeds got faster, and accidents occurred, deaths occurred on those road races, we started to build racetracks around the world. So dedicated areas where we could really push the limits of the technology. And again, really focused around powertrain, speed, performance. So this is Indianapolis Motor Speedway, targeted for horseless carriages. So we're still sort of like 15 years later and we're still describing cars as horseless carriages. So it's going to be interesting what we call self-driving cars as we move forward. Last summer, we actually drove across a strip of these Indianapolis bricks. So these bricks have been moved to Goodwood, which is a stately home in the UK. It's used for an annual hill climb, runs in the summer. And when we passed over those bricks, I like to say that we kind of shifted motorsport from the horseless carriage era, which we've been living in for the last 109 years, towards the driverless car era. So yeah, at RoboRace, we build intelligent machines. We build robots that drive. We build robots that actually want to race. That's the whole premise. So you'll see here, this is Robocar at Goodwood. The strip of bricks is just in front there. Robocar itself is a fully electric four-wheel drive vehicle. So it has 4 independent electric motors, a 63 kilowatt hour battery. So we can do independent torque vectoring within the vehicle. It has all of the sensors and compute required for autonomous driving. So we have 5 LiDAR on the car. We have 2 radar. We have 6 machine vision cameras, 18 ultrasonics. We have a GPS inertial system that's accurate enough to do missile guidance. So we need export restrictions when we travel around the world. But the real challenge that we're setting in this new type of motorsport isn't a manufacturing challenge. It's a software challenge. So we make and manufacture, run and operate these cars. And the teams that compete within RoboRace competitions write the software that goes inside the car. So this was a challenge that we set for a team called Arrival. They had 6 months to develop the software in order to do this public demonstration. It was done in front of 60,000 people. We did a demonstration on the Friday, the Saturday, and the Sunday at this event. What was really nice to see, although somewhat strange, is every time we got to the top of the hill and went over the finish line, the 60,000 people in the audience clapped and applauded. So I don't really know who they were clapping and applauding for. There was no one in the car, but it's just a nice appreciation of that effort and that technology. So let's go back. We say motorsport is actually technology plus entertainment. Entertainment is really key now. Motorsport is funded through entertainment, and that leads to technology development. So without those two things, there's not a motorsport economy. So when we talk about entertainment, we really need to look at what's inspiring the next generation. Is it the traditional formats of racing? When we look at science fiction films, what are the inspirations we can take? So just put together a little montage of different films, different adverts, that really summarize where we think the cultural shift is happening. So Daniel Simon designed our vehicle. He did the Tron light cycle that you just saw there. It's obviously from Ready Player One last year. This idea that you can have the real world and the virtual world blending together, that you can control physical objects from virtual reality. This idea of uniting humans and machines, not replacing humans, but also finding a way that the AI and the human can work together. But what you'll see is that effectively we're transforming the whole world into something that can be digitized, something that can actually be used to navigate the vehicles, but take that same data and create entertainment experiences from that are completely unique to traditional motorsport. Things that you'd more likely see in a film in Hollywood. All the same technology that we're developing for simulating cars driving on the road is effectively the same technology being used by Hollywood to create special effects. So we're just bringing those two worlds together. There's a scene from Black Panther where he was remotely controlling a car. And just this idea that you can have physical and virtual reality objects in the same environment and that they can interact together. These are all new paradigms in motorsport that we're starting to look at, really from an entertainment perspective. But motorsport and artificial intelligence, some people say it's not a match made in heaven. In Formula One, there's actually a regulation that prevents any form of driver aid assisting the human driver. There's a rule that says you have to drive alone and unaided. And that rule's been in existence for the last 25 years. And because of that, technologies like active torque vectoring, active suspension, traction control, all of those technologies have been banned in motorsport. So motorsport has kind of diverged away from the needs of the road industry in terms of technology development. It's still stuck in the sort of powertrain, aerodynamic world, and now we need to move it into a software domain. So why would we want to do this? For us, it's to actually create extreme environments that can be used to push the technology limits beyond human limits. Now, some people say to me, oh, well, we haven't reached the limits of humans yet. In some ways, I would say that's right, but in terms of safety, we kind of have. So the limits of safety, if you look back in 2001, there was a kart race that was planned for the Texas Motor Speedway. The race actually got cancelled after qualifying. And it got cancelled because the cars were doing speeds, I think it's about 238 miles an hour, I think was the average speed around the quad oval that they have there. They were pulling something like 5G around the corners for 18 seconds on a 23-second lap. So that was leading to people getting tunnel vision. It was leading to decision-making being slowed down by about a second, so that cognitive impairment. And those sorts of G-forces were just too high for those human drivers. Another event that I was actually working in Formula One at the time, wasn't the best event that we'd ever done, was at Indianapolis in the Motor Speedway. So this event, this is the start of the race. So only 6 cars out of 20 actually made the start. All of them left the line, they did the formation lap. All of the Michelin shod cars came into the pits because it was deemed unsafe for those cars to race around that banking on that oval. And that was, again, that's a human safety risk. They didn't want to see those human drivers being put at that level of risk and hitting the wall in that type of environment. So we've already reached the limits of human safety within motorsport. Everything that you see now is constrained by what's the head impact risk to a human driver. So the speeds, they're not the optimal speeds that we can get to, they're constrained. And everything's designed to the rules and regulations. But it's also interesting when we start to look at the limits of prediction. Formula One or any sort of motorsport is all about being able to predict the level of grip that you're going to have going into a corner. If you're not doing that, you're not running at the edge. And it was really interesting to see this example from NASCAR last year, racing on a Roval the first time at Charlotte. Again, they've been driving around, cold tires. They've all got to make a judgment as to how much risk they should take. You can see quite a few drivers didn't quite get that right. But it's really hard. The decision-making process that human drivers are going through is difficult. It is a guess, if you like, but it's an educated guess. Now, there's also something else which is like limits of awareness. So when you're driving, normally you're aware of what's around you, but you may not be aware of what's coming. So this is a great example from the Macau Grand Prix World Cup. Took place in... The guy driving is actually our CEO, that's Lucas de Grassi. And you can see that's not the way that we want to be showcasing technology in motorsport in the future. If this was an autonomous race, this would be headline news all around the world. Autonomous cars can't drive. What I'd really like to point out is the value of connectivity. If you see the first car around miss the accident completely, if you have situational awareness, if you have the knowledge that there's an object in the way, you can replan your path. If you don't have that knowledge, you just come around the corner, flat out, no grip left, and you end up in a pile-up. And something I like to talk about also is intelligence collaboration or intelligence augmentation. You know, the idea of adding that into motorsport, if you're driving alone and unaided, it should not be the case. But it actually exists already. We've already started to assist human drivers. So NASCAR drivers regularly have spotters that have a bird's eye view of the environment. That bird's eye view is then communicated to the human driver through voice. So he can explain what cars are approaching, where they're coming from, where the gaps are. Now that, to me, is somewhat like kind of cheating in a way. In Formula One, we don't have that, but in Formula One, you don't have that full aerial view, and you're never racing side by side for very long. In NASCAR, it's a performance advantage. I'd love to see the day when the spotter's actually replaced by AI technology that's running inside the car. For me, that's another great example of the power of this technology. The other thing that we often overlook is the rally co-driver. So again, that's a form of intelligence augmentation. You know, the human is fully engaged in the operational driving task, but needs some information to be provided by somebody else that's doing a parallel task, thinking about something in a very different way, but contributing to the overall performance. If you don't have a co-driver with you, yes, you can drive, but you won't reach the optimal speeds. But when we talk about performance in the future, what are we going to be measuring? You know, in the past, it's always been speed. It's been minimum times. It's always been about horsepower. That's the direction we've been heading. But we really see a shift now that's occurring within the industry where horsepower will be complemented by cognitive power. So how intelligent is your machine? Not just how fast is it, but how intelligent is it? What can it actually do? And that's what we say is cognitive power. And that's going to be across all industries as well. That's not just in the automotive sector, but the cognitive power of the AI technology behind any service that we use is going to be fundamentally important. How we measure that, I'm not sure. You know, we've had horsepower. I'm not sure what the CP will be. I'm not sure. But really, we're going to start talking about not only capability, but also ability. You know, what can these cars do? You know, what are we expecting them to be able to do? And I like to show this video. From TRI. The video started in the wrong location. But there's TRI have a very interesting way of communicating the testing and development that they're doing. They've started now to talk about scenarios. So what are the capabilities of the car?
The other two demonstrations are going to be in Guardian mode. This is for people who want to drive. It's a safety net against having a crash. We have designed a special test car which has dual steering wheels, dual brakes, and dual accelerators. The reason for this is that we need two different personnel in the front of the car. One is a safety driver. The other driver is a test driver. They are there to interact with the car as if they're the actual driver in a production car. But for our development, this is a tremendous advance because it lets us test the Guardian system with an actual test driver while still having a safety driver there just in case.
We're going to start off with the chauffeur mode of the car, where the car is going to be doing all the driving for us. So you can basically sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. All right, you ready, Sharon?
Yes, I'm ready. Are you ready, Aaron?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
And one of the real world things that we have to handle in self-driving mode are all the randomness that occurs every day. Actually, in this lap, we're recreating a scenario where we've had a pickup truck drive along the track and actually dump some hay bales out of the back randomly. So what you're going to see is our car senses, does a safe lane change, senses the next one, and also then changes back.
Very smooth.
So what I like to, with these types of tests, you're showcasing
So we're gonna show you in
capability
this
of the
slide
vehicle,
how
of
this car
the
is
software that's
interacting
inside the
with
car.
traffic.
One of the things that they didn't show in that video, there's something called the reveal, which is like a last minute appearance of an object you need to avoid. I'd like to see if you could spot that within this video.
Oh, it's on! Oh, that's horrendous! That's absolutely enormous. He just couldn't see him. Pasma's obviously either broken down or something. Oh, that's awful.
So this is an example within motorsport. So the same types of scenarios that we're trying to avoid on the road, but in a much more extreme environment. Unfortunately, this accident in the UK led to Billy Munger losing both his legs. So it was actually horrendous. It really sort of flagged up the need for vehicle-to-vehicle communication, that need to be able to communicate where are these objects. At the moment in motorsport, we still tend to use flags or digital versions of flags, and that's our method for communication. It's not accurate enough. Drivers need more information. So first thing is, yeah, we can use technology to enhance motorsport, make motorsport safer. But then what do we do after that? You know, motorsport is great, we'll build an entertainment product, but really we're looking for real world value that comes out of this environment. So the key thing is that we can transfer these innovations from a motorsport domain to human-driven cars in the real world. And why do we want to do that? Well, these are some accident stats from 2012. If you look at the number of road deaths that are occurring, compared to other forms of death for this age group, we are the primary killer of children between 15 and 29. I'm not sure that's something that we should be proud of. By 2030, we'll be the 5th largest cause of death around the world, across all age ranges. That's the mobility sector, that's the automotive sector. That's kind of our industry. And do we think that that's acceptable? You know, for me, that's something that definitely needs to change. And that's one, when you saw the video at the beginning, we talk about 2 missions, effectively, 2 things that we're targeting for 2050. One is zero net emissions on CO2, and the other is 0 road deaths around the world. Now, to do that, you have to deploy the technology, and you have to deploy it globally. So I think we've come to a point now where we've mastered machines. You know, humans are able to interact with machines. They almost become like our exoskeletons. So if you take a Formula One car, for example, the human driver perceives it as his own body, as an extension to his own body. And by doing that, he has full control over the vehicle. But what happens when that vehicle becomes intelligent? You know, there's a lot of debate at the moment about when you start to fight some of the active systems that are in the car. And that's really, I think, what we need to start looking at. So not only full autonomy, but this interaction of human and machine. So I often say, like, how do we master intelligence? I did a presentation to a school not so long ago. It kind of went back to the idea of this domestication of AI. You know, we've been here before. This isn't something new to us as humans. You know, we domesticated horses. We trained, we bred them. Yeah, these are completely different forms of intelligence that we've learned how to work with, and in collaboration we can achieve something that's amazing. And I see that as a very nice symbiotic future for humans and AI working together. But you have to understand how the AI is working, the AI has to understand how you work, and you have to form that bond in the same way that you do between the human and the horse. So in order to look at that technology, we've also released a second vehicle. So you saw RoboCar, which was the fully autonomous car. We've actually got DevBot, which is our development vehicle platform. DevBot's had a refresh, it's got new bodywork. But what we can look at is the interaction between human and machine within this vehicle prototype. And by doing that, we can look for anything from level 0, so human manually driving, all the way up to sort of level 5 autonomy. So anything that sits in between. But I'd also like to add in there some other stuff. Our definitions are somewhat different to the SAE. So we talk about assisted as being information that's displayed, augmented, sort of parallel control. Adapted is something that I'd like to touch on as well, which is being able to say that the fundamental shift is that we now have a fully software-defined vehicle platform. The moment you have that, your control interface can completely change. You're no longer limited to a steering wheel, throttle, and a brake. And then we obviously have automated driving.
From the bottom of my heart, to be back.
I'd like to show you share this video with you guys. This was from Daytona earlier this year. Alex Zanardi is an amazing ambassador for the sport. Again, lost both his legs in a motor racing accident. So I'd just like to let that play out. And you'll get to see the role that adapted technology can really play in enhancing people's lives.
Well, the first impression here at the Speedway was not exactly what I was expecting, because I've been here before, but I didn't remember the place to be this big. Evidently, when I came here last time, I was in my early 30s, and all I could think of was, where is my car? I want to drive. Whether now I tend to be impressed and intimidated by the size of the facility. When we start to think about what I would need to try to drive the car longer in the distance into an endurance race, the idea was for sure to forget the legs, you know, and do everything with my hands. Although it may look not that difficult to do, it is in reality, because when you press the lever with your hand, you have to have a different feel with your fingers. Your muscles are doing one thing and other muscles are doing another thing. And while I'm doing this, my head is basically focused in applying the right amount of pressure, but I'm kind of blipping the throttle at times because I need to feed a little bit of power, and on the same time I'm steering in with the left hand. As far as the driver change, everything needs to be adapted. So John yesterday had to do a little bit of an extra work in placing the seat insert and helping me in a different way with the seat belts. And on top of everything, we have the steering wheel change, which takes a little bit of time. But all in all, I think the start is excellent.
So what's really interesting for me is when we take that technology and we start to bring that to real road cars. So this is Sam Schmidt. Sam, quadriplegic, but he's been doing some amazing work in the last few years on adapting road cars in order for him to be able to drive again. He's the first person to actually have a semi-automated driving license, I think from the state of Nevada. Now, the level of AI within this car is quite minimal at the moment, but it's something that's going to increase, and as we move in that direction, make mobility available to everybody. And that doesn't mean just climbing into a taxi, into an automated Uber. That means being able to take control of the vehicle again, but in a safe way. It's exactly the same technology that will come down to help our children when they learn to drive. There's an assistant, something that's sitting next to you. So just like to leave you with those 4 words that we like to talk about. The future of AI inside automotive is assisted, augmented, adapted, and automated driving. So with that, I'd like to thank you for coming along to the session. I hope that was a stimulating way to start the day. Thank you very much.